The Rock's ideal Expendables role would have fixed the Sylvester Stallone franchise's worst problem. The Expendables has potentially run its course as a franchise after 2023's Expendables, and it's a shame that the movie series will end without featuring an action star who's always felt like a perfect fit, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The wrestler-turned-actor once admitted he wouldn't mind starring in an Expendables movie, and his casting would have fixed the worst problem that the series has faced since its first film. With one notable exception, The Expendables has always been short on memorable villains to challenge Sylvester Stallone and his band of aging action heroes. Dwayne Johnson can definitely pull off an action villain, as seen with his performance as Fast Five's Luke Hobbs, the best villain of the Fast and Furious movie franchise. It would have made perfect sense then to cast him as a villain in one of the Expendables movies, working against Stallone's Barney Ross in one of his missions. Alas, Stallone and Expendables creator David Callahan appear to have missed their opportunity to cast The Rock in a role he was apparently interested in playing, leaving the franchise with arguably just one memorable villain across its 4 movies. It was during an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit in 2014 that Dwayne Johnson first declared his wish to be an Expendables villain. When asked whether he was going to join the Expendables on their next mission, he turned the question on its head and instead answered that he wanted to go after Barney Ross, Jason Statham's Lee Christmas, and the other members of the team. Unfortunately, Johnson's dream Expendables role never came to pass, and it now looks as though the franchise has probably passed him by. The Rock's presence as a villain was sorely lacking in at least 3 out of the 4 Expendables movies, in which Eric Roberts, Mel Gibson, and Andy Garcia were less than convincing as their chief antagonists. While the Expendables franchise focused its attention on gathering together a star-studded ensemble of action stars without precedent, including the likes of Jason Statham, Arnold, Dolph Lundgren, Jet Li, Terry Crews, and Bruce Willis, it rarely found villains capable of matching the lot of them. The one exception to the franchise's lackluster villains came with The Expendables 2, which is by far the best Expendables movie. Even before shooting began, Sylvester Stallone was making it known that he'd been waiting to have a showdown with Jean-Claude Van Damme on screen for a long time. 2 of the biggest action stars of the 1980s predictably go at each other in the movie's climactic scene, and it doesn't disappoint, offering up exactly the kind of hand-to-hand combat we've been waiting for since the first Expendables was announced. In the end, Stallone beats Van Damme, but it's not before the latter is able to show what he can do in arguably the coolest scene in the entire franchise. The Expendables 2's Gene Villain is the only main villain in the series who can genuinely be classed as a fighter. Even more importantly, however, it's clear the amount of effort that Van Damme has put into creating this slippery medieval, who appears to take pleasure in making others afraid of him. While Jean-Claude Van Damme's Gene Villain is unspeakably evil, Dwayne Johnson could have brought something different to the table as a villain in another Expendables movie. As The Rock shows in his first Fast and Furious appearance, 2011's Fast 5, he's more than ready to go toe-to-toe with any action star as an antagonist, even if they're Vin Diesel. What was more impressive, though, was that Johnson's character, Luke Hobbs, was not inherently evil. He was ultimately a special agent just trying to do his job. This nuanced approach to an antagonist would have served the Expendables franchise well, given that Barney Ross and his team are ultimately mercenaries who aren't necessarily on the side of any state. It would be an interesting change of angle to see the Expendables fighting a branch of the U.S. state, as Dom Toretto and his gang do in Fast 5. That said, it would have also been fun to see Johnson playing an actual villain, something he rarely does.